There was something sitting on Sandy Munro's desk, and he kept coming back to look at it. Sandy Munro is not easy to impress. He has spent his entire career tearing apart vehicles from the biggest automakers in the world: Ford, General Motors, Toyota, removing every bolt, weighing every panel, and then bluntly explaining what works, what does not, and what is simply a waste of money. He has never been afraid to call out Tesla engineers directly and say certain parts of their cars look like they had been designed by a child. He does not give anyone a free pass. But this time was different. When he cut open that component, he stopped. He looked inside, then he looked again. What was wrapped around the rotating core was not what he expected. It was not ordinary metal. It was not some standard industrial alloy. It was carbon fiber, tightly wound, heat-treated, reinforced to such an extreme degree that Munro used the word scary to describe it. This was an electric motor, but not a normal electric motor. Somewhere inside a Tesla factory, a group of engineers had been given a seemingly simple assignment: build a motor cheap enough to go into millions of vehicles. What they delivered broke one of the rules the electric vehicle industry had lived with for decades, the trade-off every engineer, chief technology officer, and analyst treated like an unbreakable law of physics. It accelerates faster than machines that cost 10 times more. It operates more efficiently than anything else in its class. And it is so difficult to copy that some analysts believe competitors could need nearly a decade just to catch up, and by then, Tesla may already be somewhere else entirely. This motor was never supposed to be this powerful. So how did Tesla do it? And why is it quietly making every competitor in this race nervous? Hit subscribe, and let's get into the story right now. To understand why one piece of hardware could stop someone like Sandy Munro in his tracks, we need to go back to an earlier version of this story that most people have forgotten. More than a decade ago, the world was watching one of the biggest transformations in transportation history unfold. Electric vehicles were not simply introducing a new type of car. They were changing the direction of the entire global auto industry. And one name kept appearing at the front of that race: Tesla. But here's the part most people overlook. In the beginning, almost nobody believed Tesla would be able to stay there for long. Think back to the landscape at the time.
Well, they're all very difficult technology challenges, but the overall goal of my companies is to maximize the future of civilization, like basically maximize the probability that civilization has a great future.
Tesla looked ambitious, innovative, exciting, and also dangerously fragile. Next to giants like Ford, General Motors, Toyota, and Volkswagen companies that had spent generations building enormous factories, mastering precision manufacturing, and weaving together global production networks, Tesla looked small and inexperienced. The smart money believed it was only a matter of time before the legacy giants caught up and pushed the newcomer aside. And honestly, for a while, it looked like that might actually happen. The competition became sharper.
So ultimately, we can have a fully sustainable energy economy, and it's those three things: solar, wind, stationary battery pack, electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles from rival brands became more attractive, more reliable, and more practical for everyday life. Battery performance improved much faster than many people expected. Elon Musk had painted a simple but enormous vision: solar power, wind power, battery storage, and electric vehicles, three things that could create a fully sustainable energy economy. But drawing the vision was one thing. Proving it inside one of the most brutal industries in the world was something entirely different. Some analysts began openly predicting that Tesla's advantage would slowly disappear. The story practically wrote itself. The underdog had its moment in the spotlight, and now the giants would take back the road. Then something unexpected happened. Tesla introduced a breakthrough that quietly changed the pressure inside the entire industry. It was not a new vehicle design. It was not a larger battery. It was not a software update. It was a motor. And the engineers who took it apart came to the same unsettling conclusion. Tesla was not simply leading. It had stepped into territory most competitors could not reach. The scariest part was not how powerful it was or how efficient it was. The scariest part was how hard it would be to copy. To understand why this motor made the industry shudder, you first have to accept a harsh truth about electric vehicle engineering. The laws of physics are extremely difficult to beat, and for a long time, the entire industry had basically surrendered to them. For years, automakers around the world believed they were trapped in a painful trade-off. An electric vehicle could be incredibly fast and powerful, or it could be efficient and travel a long distance on one charge. Doing both at the same time seemed almost impossible. Engineers sat in meeting rooms and shrugged. That was just how electric motors work. It was seen less as a challenge and more as a law of nature. Think about why. Whenever engineers made electric vehicles more powerful, those vehicles became heavier, overheated faster, wasted more energy, and needed huge cooling systems just to survive. Build for efficiency instead, and the vehicle felt boring, lacking the violent acceleration drivers wanted. The trade-off was accepted as unavoidable. Most companies decided physics had drawn the line, so they stopped trying to push it and optimized around the edges, calling that progress. Tesla refused to accept that line. Instead of working within the old approach, Tesla's engineers went looking for a completely different path. And after years of research, they built one of the most advanced electric drive units ever placed in a consumer vehicle. At the center of it was something that sounds simple but is incredibly difficult to perfect: a carbon fiber wrapped rotor.
We're going to show you the motor. In fact, you might have had a chance to see the drive unit. I mean, this is really an amazing work of engineering.
This was the detail Sandy Munro kept coming back to, the part that stopped him at his desk. Why does it matter so much? Let me explain it as simply as possible. Inside every electric motor is a spinning component called a rotor. During operation, it rotates at unbelievable speeds. As that speed rises, the forces inside become violent. The faster the rotor spins, the more it behaves as if it is trying to tear itself apart from the inside. Most traditional rotors cannot handle that. They deform, they come apart, they basically cook themselves into scrap metal. Tesla found a way around that by wrapping the rotor in carbon fiber, a material known for being incredibly strong while remaining surprisingly lightweight. That wrapping acts like armor, holding the rotor together under enormous pressure. It is the same kind of material trusted in race cars and aerospace, now being used for one of the harshest jobs inside an entire vehicle. And this was one of the first times anyone had done it in a mass-produced electric vehicle. The result was remarkable. This carbon-wrapped drive unit can spin at more than 20,000 revolutions per minute, a level that is almost unheard of in ordinary vehicles. Speeds like that are usually associated with specialized industrial machines, not luxury sedans sitting in your garage. 20,000 revolutions per minute in a car you can use to drive your kids to school. Let that sink in for a second. But raw speed was not the real breakthrough. What made this design revolutionary was the control and stability it maintained at those extreme speeds. The carbon wrapping tamed vibrations and kept the rotor balanced, and that stability sharpened its magnetic performance, allowing more electrical energy to become actual motion instead of escaping as heat. That is the part quietly destroying competitors. In a typical motor, a large portion of the energy pulled from the battery gets lost as heat, noise, and vibration. Tesla found a way to recover much of that. More battery power moves the vehicle, less battery power gets wasted. The same battery gives you more range, more speed, and less heat. That kind of win does not stay inside one product. It multiplies across every Tesla vehicle built from this point forward. The benefits rewrote expectations for what electric vehicles could do. Massive instant torque, shocking acceleration, high efficiency on long trips, compact packaging, lower weight, and less need for cooling compared with rival systems. And that last point matters more than people realize. Cooling systems are heavy, expensive, and take up space that could otherwise hold batteries, passengers, or cargo. A motor that runs cooler means less weight, less complexity, fewer potential failure points, and more usable range from the same battery pack. Other automakers have to add pumps, radiators, and cooling lines just to keep their motors alive under hard driving conditions. Tesla quietly eliminated much of that headache. The world saw the full power of this in the Tesla Model S Plaid. The Plaid uses 3 electric motors to produce more than 1,000 horsepower, and it launches from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 2 seconds. For most of automotive history, a number like that belonged only to race cars and exotic machines worth many times more. The Plaid can outrun supercars costing millions of dollars, and the unbelievable part is what it still is underneath all that violence. A comfortable luxury sedan that can carry an entire family for hundreds of miles on a single charge. A grocery getter that launches like a rocket. That is the kind of result that keeps rival engineers awake at night. But the most intimidating part is not how powerful it is how long it could take competitors to copy it. Carbon fiber wrapping at production scale is a manufacturing nightmare. One tiny mistake in the wrapping, and the entire rotor has to be thrown away. Think about what that actually requires on a factory floor. Carbon fiber arrives in thin, pre-impregnated strips, and it has to be wrapped around the rotor under exact, unchanging tension. Then it must be heat-treated under the right level of heat and pressure until it becomes one solid hardened shell. Wrap it even slightly too loose, and the rotor bends and fails at high speed. Wrap it too tight, and the fibers crack themselves apart. Miss the temperature or timing during the treatment process, and the entire part becomes scrap. Then every finished rotor must be balanced to a tolerance most factories never even have to think about, because an invisible vibration at highway speed becomes a self-destructive force at 20,000 revolutions per minute. A competitor cannot simply photograph the component and recreate it. They would have to rebuild the entire process from scratch, line by line, failure by failure, paying for every broken rotor along the way. That is years of pain Tesla has already paid for. Everyone else is just opening the bill. To understand why Tesla was willing to pay that price while others were not, you need to understand the pressure pushing the company. Because another story was happening at the same time behind the scenes, and it began with a truck almost nobody was buying. The Cybertruck was sold to the world as the future of transportation, but it quietly became a problem. After years of hype and global attention, sales reportedly dropped far below Tesla's expectations. The truck that was supposed to dominate American roads became one of the most talked about disappointments in the company's history, and the numbers told an uncomfortable story. According to reports, the situation became difficult enough that nearly 1 out of every 5 Cybertrucks registered during one quarter went to companies connected to Musk himself, including SpaceX and XAI. Internal registrations were helping support the numbers. Recalls were eroding confidence. And in a market where buyers suddenly had dozens of electric vehicle choices, Tesla's loudest product was not carrying its own weight. That mattered more than it looked. Tesla's entire reputation was built on the idea that anything it touched could reshape its category. The Cybertruck was supposed to be proof. Instead, it became a reminder that even Tesla could swing hard and miss. The company built on inevitability suddenly looked vulnerable. So Musk needed something that could not be debated. Not a style exercise. Not a marketing stunt. Something fundamental, the kind of progress that changes what is possible instead of simply changing what is popular. And Tesla had the appetite to pursue exactly that. The company raised its spending plans to more than $25 billion, with Musk pouring money into artificial intelligence, robotics, and chips. The question was, where would the next undeniable breakthrough actually come from? And inside a quiet engineering workshop, far away from headlines about the Cybertruck, the next chapter of that obsession was already beginning to spin into shape. Now let's talk about the competition and why catching up is so difficult. Plenty of companies know how to build a jaw-dropping prototype. They show off a futuristic shape, attract investors, and dominate headlines for a week. But building a few beautiful vehicles and producing millions of them are two completely different sports, and the second one is where most companies die. This is also exactly where Tesla has become one of the most intimidating names in the industry. The auto world is filled with the wreckage of companies that once promised to change transportation forever. Beautiful concept vehicles, massive excitement, and then disaster the moment real production began. Building an advanced electric vehicle is difficult. Producing millions of them consistently at a price people can afford while staying profitable, that is an entirely different and ruthless challenge. Tesla understood this earlier than its competitors. While other companies poured energy into grand designs and marketing, Tesla spent years fighting ugly manufacturing battles behind the scenes. Production lines that did not work, robots clashing with each other, bottlenecks that nearly killed the company more than once, sleeping bags on factory floors, and weeks where bankruptcy seemed only a few steps away. Those ugly years are now paying off in ways the industry cannot ignore. Tesla revealed that its next-generation drive units, the same family built around that carbon-wrapped rotor, are being designed not only for speed, efficiency, or performance, but for something even more important: manufacturability. The ability to build them quickly, cheaply, and perfectly at massive scale. Here is the number that should make competitors sweat. Tesla wants the entire drive unit, the motor, power, electronics, and gearbox combined to cost only around $1,000 to manufacture. $1,000. Some competitors spend 3 to 5 times that amount just to achieve similar performance. That gap is not small. It is enormous. Let that sink in for a second. If a competitor spends between $3,000 and $5,000 for every drive unit it ships, while Tesla spends $1,000, that difference multiplies across every vehicle, across hundreds of thousands of vehicles each year. That is the kind of margin that quietly finances entire new product lines while competitors are still trying to break even. Tesla can cut prices, win buyers, and still make money in markets where competitors are losing money. And the situation gets even worse for everyone else, because Tesla keeps finding ways to reduce costs while improving performance. The company's been working to remove rare earth materials from its motors, reducing its dependence on expensive supply chains heavily tied to China. The magnets inside most powerful electric motors rely on elements such as neodymium and dysprosium, and the refining of those elements is dominated by a small number of suppliers concentrated mostly in one country. That concentration gives one government real leverage over the cost and even the availability of motors built anywhere on Earth. If Tesla truly solves that problem, one pressure point competitors and governments have worried about for a decade could simply lose its grip. At the same time, Tesla has been redesigning its electronics to rely less on expensive silicon carbide, the semiconductor material that manages the flow of energy between the battery and the motor without giving up efficiency. Step by step, Tesla is removing the exact bottlenecks its competitors are still being squeezed by, and the cycle keeps spinning. Lower production costs allow Tesla to lower prices. Lower prices attract more buyers. More buyers increase production volume. Higher volume brings more manufacturing experience and efficiency. That experience cuts costs even further. The cycle spins faster and stronger, while every competitor is chasing a target that keeps moving farther away. Meanwhile, the competition is bleeding. Ford has built genuinely impressive electric vehicles like the Mustang Mach-E and the F-150 Lightning, and it has still lost huge amounts of money through its electric vehicle division. Think about that. Ford has been building cars for more than a century. It understands trucks. It understands scale. And it is still losing money on every electric vehicle it ships. Lucid Motors has built luxury electric vehicles packed with advanced technology and is still burning cash at an alarming pace. Rivian attracted enormous attention and investment, but its production costs remain painfully high. Even giants like General Motors and Volkswagen have faced delays, software problems, and growing concerns about profitability. This is what trying to catch Tesla really looks like from the inside. It is not glamorous. It is not victorious. Most of the time, it is just losing money a little more slowly than the company next to you. Among global rivals, only BYD appears capable of challenging Tesla at massive scale, especially in lower-cost markets. But here's the part most people miss. BYD's strength mainly comes from affordability, from flooding markets with lower-priced vehicles. Tesla is chasing something bigger. It is not simply trying to build cheap electric vehicles. It is trying to build the most advanced and desirable electric vehicles on Earth while also making them cheap to manufacture. Cheap is one thing. Cheap, fast, efficient, and desirable all at once is something almost nobody else can promise. And this is where the story takes a strange turn. Because most people still think Tesla is a car company, that assumption may be the most expensive mistake the entire auto industry has ever made. Let's start with the data. Every Tesla on the road is constantly collecting driving information. Every mile teaches the company more about road conditions, driver behavior, weather, traffic, and rare events. That matters because automated systems improve through experience, just like a normal driver becomes sharper after years behind the wheel. Tesla has accumulated more real-world driving data than almost any competitor on the planet, and that advantage continues to multiply exponentially. More cars generate more data. More data trains smarter systems. Smarter systems attract more buyers. More buyers generate more data. Competitors cannot buy that overnight. They would need years of vehicles on the road just to begin catching up. And those vehicles have to be desirable enough for people to actually want them. That brings us back to the motor. A cheaper, more efficient, harder to copy drive unit means more Teslas on more roads, generating more data faster than anyone else can keep up with. The motor is not just a motor, it is the thing filling the roads with sensors that feed an entire empire. Then there is the battery business. Tesla has poured billions of dollars into building its own batteries because batteries are the most expensive part of an electric vehicle. Its 4,680 battery cells are intended to increase energy density, lower costs, simplify production, and improve performance. Most competitors still rely heavily on outside suppliers, which means they're paying someone else's profit margin on the most expensive part of every vehicle they sell. When you make your own batteries, you are not just avoiding a supplier markup. You can design the battery and vehicle around each other from the first sketch instead of fitting someone else's battery into whatever space is left. You can tune the chemistry for the exact performance the carbon rotor drive unit needs, package cells so they add structural strength to the vehicle itself, and change the formula the moment a better one appears without begging a supplier to reorganize its production. Competitors buying batteries are stuck waiting for a partner's roadmap, paying a partner's price, and accepting a partner's schedule. Tesla sets its own. The company also designs its own software, computer chips, power electronics, and vehicle systems. When the global chip shortage froze much of the auto industry, Tesla adapted faster than almost anyone by rewriting its software to run on whatever chips it could actually obtain. That one move exposed a truth the rest of the industry continued to underestimate. Tesla operates like a technology company that happens to build cars. When supply chains break, automakers stop, and software companies adapt. Now we get to one of Tesla's most underestimated weapons, the supercharger network. For years, critics treated Tesla charging stations as a nice perk for Tesla owners. They were wrong. Superchargers became one of the company's strongest advantages because they were fast, reliable, widespread, and genuinely easy to use. Eventually, the competition gave in. Companies like Ford and General Motors adopted Tesla's charging standard so their customers could plug into Tesla's network. Think about how strange that is. Tesla's competitors now depend on Tesla infrastructure to keep their own customers happy. And Tesla earns money every time a rival vehicle pulls electricity from one of its charging stations. That is not ordinary competition, that is ecosystem dominance, with rivals paying tolls on roads Tesla built. And here is the part most people miss. Every time a competitor's driver plugs in, Tesla learns something: charging patterns, peak hours, regional demand, and hardware behavior under real-world load. Even when Tesla loses a vehicle sale, it can still win at the layer beneath it. So the motor sells more Teslas. Teslas feed the network. The network feeds the data. The data feeds artificial intelligence. And inside a server room most people have never heard of, all of that is being transformed into something completely different. That thing is called Dojo. Dojo is Tesla's own supercomputer designed specifically to train artificial intelligence using the enormous flood of driving video collected from Tesla vehicles around the world. Instead of relying entirely on general-purpose systems, Dojo is designed to process that data faster and more efficiently tuned precisely for the work Tesla needs to accomplish. Most competitors rent their advantage. They rent computing power from outside suppliers, chips from companies like NVIDIA, or cloud services from Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. Tesla chose to build much of its own computing infrastructure because it believes its future depends less on the vehicles it sells today and more on the intelligence those vehicles may run tomorrow. Elon Musk once said something important about this. To solve self-driving, you really have to solve real-world artificial intelligence. Not artificial intelligence inside a controlled laboratory, but artificial intelligence that works in the messy, unpredictable, inconsistent reality of everyday life. Control the cars. And you control the data. Control the data, and you control the systems. Control the systems, and you control what driving could look like 10 years from now. That is not a head start. That is a completely different game with completely different rules. So, where does all of this lead? The real answer is not about one specific car, one specific market, or one specific product. It is about what Tesla is actually building and whether anyone else can build the same thing. Over the next 3 to 5 years, there are several realistic scenarios worth considering. If Tesla continues to reach its goal of producing a $1,000 drive unit, it could have the ability to launch a truly competitive electric vehicle, possibly priced below $25,000, and still make money on it. That vehicle, with its carbon rotor drive unit and all the software infrastructure behind it, may have no meaningful rival in Western markets for years. That is the best-case scenario for Tesla. But the race is not over. BYD is pursuing its own battery innovations and expanding outside China at remarkable speed. If it can combine its cost advantage with stronger technology, it could become a serious challenger, even in markets Tesla dominates today. Governments could change the game in unpredictable ways through subsidies, tariffs, domestic manufacturing requirements, or technology export restrictions. All of those create real uncertainty, and Tesla still faces challenges of its own. Full self-driving has been delayed multiple times beyond Musk's predictions. Optimus, the robot promised as an essential future workforce, is still in its early testing stages. And consumer trust is a fragile resource. A series of high-profile incidents, public recalls, or continued buyer disappointment could damage the brand in ways a better drive unit cannot fix. The competition is learning too. More slowly, more expensively. But it is learning. Every passing year brings more engineers, better factories, and a deeper understanding of why copying Tesla is so difficult. Those lessons have value. What makes this race fascinating is that nobody truly knows how it ends, only that there are possible scenarios, and the gap Tesla currently holds is very, very large. Let's go back to Sandy Munro's desk. He was holding a rotor in his hand, a small, relatively ordinary-looking part, not something you would display in your living room. But what was wrapped around it, how it had been made, and what it represented made him stop long enough to talk about it repeatedly for months afterward. Because what he saw was not simply a clever engineering solution to an old problem. He saw evidence of years of pain, failure,